Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Respect, Humility, Empathy podcast. I'm here with Isaiah Diesel. I'm Martial Law, and we are here with an atheist. Well, that's
Hardcore
two
atheist.
of us. The hardcore atheist.
The 2-on-1 right now.
It's 2-on-1. Yeah. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go to town on Isaiah. And then when I get tired, I'm going to tag team Leo down here. And Leo's going to go to work on Isaiah. And when this is all done, Isaiah will be singing the praises of our holy master, Lord and Savior, Richard Dawkins and Charles Darwin. But we'll see about that. Isaiah, where did you find this guy?
Well, thank you for joining us today. Got a very special guest, Leo Lascour. Is that how I say your name?
Yeah, everybody actually calls me Moose. So Moose? If you want to call me Moose or Leo.
There you
Moose.
go.
Okay, Moose.
There you go.
Moose. I had a friend in college, and everybody called him Goose. So
there you go.
And the guy actually sounded like Bill Clinton, man. It was hysterical. But anyway, so I really want to thank you, Leo, for coming on today, Moose. We were looking for guests to come into this podcast, and Marshall is what you would call like a soft A atheist, or soft or lowercase atheist, meaning he's not like an anti-theist, So no. I was out posting in this group. It's called Adamantly Anti-Theist, and I had a lot of people say some really disrespectful things and really rude things, but Leo was kind enough to respond with respect. And so I'm very honored, very pleased to have you on today, Leo. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm 49. I'm a single dad, raised my son alone since he was about 5 months old.
Wow.
Just living my life. Yeah.
I'm digging the beard.
Yeah, it's the longest it's ever been, actually. I've always kept it cropped, but if I look like the zigzag guy.
or an Amish. You look like you could. I was wondering if you're really an atheist. You might be like an undercover Amish.
No. Oh no.
Can I ask you a question? Agent. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? This show is not going to primarily be so much about atheism, because we're going to be focusing on substance abuse and some mental health stuff today. But can you tell us a little bit about how you became an atheist and for how long, and anything else you want to tell us about that, please?
It was just a recognition of my own. I was like 9.
Wow.
And I have 8 sisters and 3 brothers.
What?
Yeah.
And you're not Amish?
Nope.
Wow.
Actually, my dad met my mom when she had 8 kids. He raised 8 kids. My mom's first 2 husbands were drunks and beat her. So my dad went with my mom, raised her kids like, his own till the day he died. So
unbelievable. Wow.
My dad was never really religious. He was in Korea. He fought in the Korean War when he was 16.
Korea.
So he did that because his family life was so his dad beat him, broke his mom's nose, blackened her eyes. So he beat the shit out of my grandfather, and he joined the military. And I never heard him say God. Never heard him speak a religious word, but that man was the most, piss him off, you kill you. But he was the most kindest, gentlest person. And he was just a fair man. So I didn't have that religion in my head. My mom would pray to God at night, and then she'd beat us for telling her wait, or telling her to hold on, or anything. We couldn't go in the refrigerator. We couldn't do things. And my dad was always out working. He was a roofer and a mason. So my mom, well, you're going to go to hell for lying, don't lie. And then she'd beat the hell out of you for not answering her quick enough. So I didn't see the correlation with my mom being so cruel, but she wasn't a mother. She didn't get, kids are going to be kids. Yeah. You can be a normal kid. But when you're so afraid about being a kid that you don't have a childhood because of your mom. So actually, I'm like, you know what? I'll pray. I prayed to God for my mom to stop beating us. She never stopped. So she didn't stop until I got out of the service, and she tried to ground me. And I just looked at her like,
Are you serious?
I'm not a 9-year-old kid anymore. I learned how to kill people. Where is that maternal instinct? I actually tried to read the Bible, and I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't get my head wrapped around the talking snakes and all this. And my mom had religious friends, and they try to cherry pick or try to, give their own interpretation of the Bible. And I'd see the news, and there was kids starving in Africa when I was 9. So, you see, if you're a God and you see 26,000 children die of starvation, are you cruel? If you can feed 5,000 men with 1 loaf of bread and 1 fish or whatever, why are they fly covered, miserable? That's suffering.
Yeah.
I'm an atheist, but when you see that level of the human suffering and nothing's being done, and then wars are breaking out all around them because of religion, I think if people were humanists, they wouldn't have that, well, God's on my side, so I'm right. I was going to fight in the Kuwaiti War and Desert Storm, and I was, in basic training, you had to go to church. You had to pick a denomination, whether you're atheist or not, and you had to go to church. Pick one. Yeah, that's what they told you. So you can die a soldier with no religion preferred, but you can't take your personal Sunday to do stuff. You have to spend 4 hours in church. And when you look at it and you see the news, the Taliban are praying to their God that they win, and the military chaplains are praying to our God that we win. Somebody's going to lose. Somebody always loses. So it's how you look at it. Well, he died a hero. No, he didn't. He died for sand or oil, and it's a God-driven, the president pushes you to war with that Bible in his hand. Wrap yourself in that flag. It's not about that. People like to, I just see it's just, if creationism. If we were in God's image, we wouldn't have rotten teeth. We wouldn't need glasses. We wouldn't have cancer. We wouldn't have addiction. We'd live forever. We can't live forever. So we're not in God's image. So there's a lot of things I just can't swallow.
Yeah.
And especially when you try to subvert your religion to make laws, laws of the land, that's not fair.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for your perspective. That's quite a perspective you got there. Just one other quick question. Would you consider yourself a capital A atheist, meaning you positively believe that God does not exist, or that God exists, or like kind of like a small a atheist where like you don't believe that God exists, or do you fall on the anti-theist spectrum? How does that work, the anti-theist?
Well, I don't believe in your God, like I don't believe in Muhammad, like I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy, like I don't believe in Ganesh, like I don't believe. They're all, in their time they were gods. Today they're myths. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Marshall, you got a follow-up question?
Well, just so people understand, because some folks who might not have been participating in that forum or might not be familiar with atheism might not know that scale. So I want to real quick run down that scale for our listeners, viewers.
Thank you.
And it's called the Dawkins Scale, named after the British author and famous atheist Richard Dawkins. I believe he's also an evolutionary biologist. And yeah, he is. He's probably like, if there were a president of atheism, he might win the election for sure. There's a scale, and it goes from 1 to 7. And number 1 is strong theist, meaning I do not question the existence of God. Like, I know for a fact God exists. And there's level 2, de facto atheist. I cannot know for certain, but I strongly believe in God. And then there's weak theist. I'm very uncertain, but I'm inclined to believe in God. There's pure agnostic. God's existence and non-existence are equally equiprobable, meaning they could or he might or might not exist. There's no way on to balance on that scale. Then there's 5, weak atheist. I do not know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. Then there's 6, de facto atheist. I cannot know for certain, but I think God is very improbable, and I'm probably right there between 5 and 6 personally, by the way. And then we've got our man Leo here, who is 100% sure that there is no God. That's level 7, strong atheist. And that's where I would be, except I can't solve a logical problem regarding atheism. And you know, frankly, for me, it's about logic. And I wish I weren't an atheist. I'm actually a reluctant atheist, but this is where the logic leads me. It leads me to 5, 6. And I've got to follow my reason, because that's the one gift God gave me, assuming he exists. He gave it to me for a reason, and I need to use that noggin he gave me. And that's where it places me. Leo, so basically your journey is just kind of a journey of skepticism, and you're kind of viewing all this evil around you in the world, and you're thinking, man, if God exists, why does he allow this? But did you ever look into any of the other interpretations of God, like Hinduism, Buddhism, any of that stuff? Or do you think that's all just equal hogwash in your opinion? Or what kind of homework have you done on this? I'm just asking.
Just my personal opinions and what I've seen.
Yeah.
If there's only one true God, how come there's over 5,000 religions? What I'm saying? So
yeah,
that's the word of God. Oh, wait a minute, the New Testament. Wait a minute, that's the Old Testament. Wait a minute, the King James Version. The King James Version, King James was a terrible man.
He used a lot of bad words.
He was a terrible, the Borgias, they were a terrible family. The Vatican, it was crooked from the day one. So they have to, so it's my God is better. Oh, no, they have another religion in France. Oh, geez. No, it's not a race to religions if there's only one true God.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So thank you for that, Leo. Just to give you an idea of what we're doing here, we're trying to find common ground, because we're on that 1 through 7, we're on different scales on there. You know, we all fall in a different place, but we're trying to say, okay, we might disagree in this area, but how can we find common ground on another issue, which is like what we're going to talk about today, which is addiction. You know, that's our source material for today. So I'm a Christian, and yet what you said about your mom is like exactly what happened with my mom. Like exactly. So I grew up in kind of like, wait a minute, you're going to church on Sunday, but then you're turning around and you're treating me like this way. Like,
that was the funniest part, though. She wouldn't go to church, but she'd always invoke the name of God, and she had a mouth on her that would make a sailor blush.
Yeah, no, I get it. So we can, first of all, we can find that common ground. Okay. Second of all, is that it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or if you're a non-Christian or an atheist or Buddhist or Muslim, is that people have mental health issues and substance abuse issues, no matter where you are.
Let me give you, the thing is, most atheists, we're humanists. I care if you live or die. I care if you suffer with addiction. We care. but we don't need a deity saying we should care.
Well, thank you. And that's actually going to come into one of the questions I want to ask you. So what is the source of addiction? One, and do you find it to be mostly genetic or environmental?
There's a lot of variables. It could be genetic, hereditary, but a lot of addiction is pain, mental pain, body pain. Somebody, you know, if somebody all of a sudden starts to drink or starts to do drugs, they hurt.
Right.
They, you know, whether their mind hurts, their heart hurts, they're going through something. Whether you think, well, I'm a party guy. No, you're drinking your sorrow. You're drinking your hurt, and you're drinking your anger. So there's so many there. I could have been an alcoholic. I could have been a drug addict. I have 5 herniated discs in my back. I don't do any opiates. I haven't touched an opiate. When I tried to get on disability, they made me take opiates. I was raising a 5-month-old kid, mind you. They made me take those opiates. So, and if I refused them, I could have my case closed. If I told them I smoked pot, I could have my case closed.
Wow.
Well, don't smoke pot. Here's fentanyl. Don't smoke pot. Here's 2,900 Neurotins that you have to take a month. Don't smoke pot. Here's Cadian, a synthetic morphine. Once I got on disability, I just stayed. I stopped going to the doctors, so I'm really lucky. And I went to therapy, and stuff like that. And I knew what my mom was. So I didn't have to become an alcoholic or abuse drugs because of her. She died. So once she died, I think it's like my hate died with her.
Interesting.
I hated her since I was 9.
Wow, we got so much more to talk about with that, but I want to kick it over to Marshall first. But yeah, man, there's so much common ground we have there. Marshall?
Yeah. So have you yourself, Leo, struggled with any kind of addiction, whether it be food or alcohol or you know, drugs? I don't know, even pot or smoking or whatever.
So before I mess my back up, I drink here and there.
Yeah, but that's like, you know, like what, once a month, once a day, once a week?
Yeah, before I was 24 when I blew 5 discs out of my back.
Oh, no.
24. Wow. That's young.
Yeah, and I worked until I was 32 on 5 blown discs with no opiate.
Wow.
In construction.
Wow.
So I never had I actually started liking the drink a lot. And my buddy's like, hey, dude, have you ever smoked a joint? I go, no. I said, that's the devil's lettuce. I can't touch that.
Devil's lettuce.
That's what my mom would call it. That wacky tobacco, that devil's lettuce, that foo-foo weed. She'd call it all kinds of things. So I tried it, and I stopped drinking. It helped.
Wow.
So from 24 to 49, I pretty much only smoked weed, and it's made me very, very thankful that I'm not an addict.
Right.
You rely on those doctors,
right?
But then they all know it's my time to cut you off. So you're done with your perks, so you have to go down the street and get heroin.
Yeah.
They should be in jail.
So, Leo, I want to tell you a little bit about my mom and the kind of abuse I saw growing up, because, my mom is a minister's wife, and I believe maybe around the age of maybe like 10 or 12, she had an accident. She tripped over something. I remember it too, because I was right there with her. And as a result of that, she had really bad back pain. Yeah. And so it just started with, you need this medication to take care of your back. And then what wound up progressing from that is, and by the way, I did not know this at the time that she was doing it, just because that's your mom or whatever. I couldn't really put two and two together. I didn't notice until actually I left to college and I came back home to visit. But so what wound up happening is it just got progressively worse though, because then I guess she built up a tolerance. Then she started needing to go into the streets to buy it. And I remember, like, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, she would get all of her prescriptions and take them all within 1 week. Then she would need to start going to street dealers. And it would get her to the point where I would like to say a zombie, but zombies move around and stuff. You know what I mean? She was just kind of like, you would just see her and she'd just be like twitching and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like a heroin addict. But so that scene, and she would fall down. She'd fall into glass and stuff. So her face would be entirely busted up and bleeding. And I remember having so much anger at her because I was just like, why can't you just stop taking these pills? But I didn't realize now in retrospect, like the internal pain that I just saw the physical part of it. So I do have a lot of regret now learning more about addiction as an adult and such. But I want to ask you a second question is there validity in the 12-step process for, substance abuse? And can you substitute a higher power for anything else? Because I heard you can say like, okay, the higher power is this cup. And that's where I'm going to draw this strength up. You just have to externalize it in some way or another. So do you think that there's validity in that 12-step process?
That's a slippery slope, because if it's court ordered and you're an atheist, is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's court ordered and the only thing you can go to is a Christian-based program, but you're willing to go, but you don't want to go to AA per se.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm the higher power. If I want to quit something, I want to stop something, if I want to get over something, Moose, Leo, I become my higher power. My loved ones around me, my buddy, boy, he's my son. For somebody to be made to go, no, that higher power and those 12 steps are legitimate. I do agree with that, but they could shy away from the dogma.
No, but thank you. I've never, ever, ever heard somebody say I'm the higher power. So I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you. Thank you for that, Leo.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Leo, man. I kind of empathize with you guys because I actually had a pretty similar experience, and I wonder if that's why we're all drawn to podcasting or something. I don't know, but I have my own childhood filled with all kinds of rough stories to tell, but I don't want to get into that right now. I want to ask you a question, and the first one, I actually have a few, but the first one based on this is, how did you survive that childhood? How did you get by? What kind of coping mechanisms did you develop to cope with that kind of childhood?
PTSD at 9.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking that, well, if my mom beats the crap out of me for doing this, everybody gets the crap beat out of them.
Yeah.
So I thought it was normal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The normalization, and the kicker of it is, my dad didn't know my mom beat us until I was 19, and I told him.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Because my dad worked so much. My brother Mike would break a window Wednesday. I'd mess up Thursday. My brother would mess up Friday. My dad would come home, and my mom would beat us Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for our mess ups. And then Saturday morning, you'd hear my mom, well, John did this, Mike did this, and my dad our ass Saturday morning for what we did Friday, Thursday, or Wednesday. So one time I was gonna kill my mom.
Wow.
But I called my one of my sisters. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna do it. She's a miserable, cruel woman. And so I moved in with my sister for a while, and I went to see my dad.
Wait, how old are you? How old are you at this point?
I was 19. I got out of the
Okay.
service. I got out of basic around. I got blind. They blinded me with tear gas in basic. So I got out of the service, and I moved back in with my mom, and I just couldn't. She was just a miserable, cruel woman. So I went to visit my dad. I go, do you realize that, you know, because my dad's like, Dad, I don't want to beat the hell out of the kids every weekend. I don't spend time with the kids. I'm not going to hit them. So that made her mad. So I told my dad, I go, do you realize that when you would come home Saturday morning and beat our ass? He goes, geez, I hated that. I go, well, we already got beat for it. He had no idea. So we got beatings twice for everything we done.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it wasn't just a slap on the ass or a slap on the hand. It was my mom would take a belt, a broom handle, anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was normal. And it was funny because I went to my buddy's house, and he was a only child, and he was a spoiled kid, and and his parents were just great people. And I would eat dinner there every night. So I was just talking to him, you know, and his mom, I'd call her mom. She was preparing dinner. And I'd talk to her. I remember when my mom did this and my mom did that. And Roseanne is like, oh, and she's cutting. And then she's starting to cry, you know, 10, 15 minutes into the story.
Wow.
I go, what's the matter, Mom? I said, you cutting onions? She stops. She goes, no, I'm listening to a story of abuse. I was 19 and a half years old when I even realized I was abused.
Wow.
So, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, you know, so it was all about me back. That was me. That was my higher power. I could get through those beatings. You know, I got through those beatings. My mom would lay a 6-foot-long leather belt across my face with no shirt, and I just point at her and laugh. So I was always the higher power taking those beatings.
Wow, thank you. I really appreciate you opening up on that. I look back on the kind of abuse that I got from my mom, and it was very, very, very sporadic. Meaning she suffered from PTSD and like bipolar. And I got counseling at the age of 32. I was divorced, and I found Jesus Christ, and I wound up going to divorce. And then 3 years later, after that, I was able to reunite with my wife, and she got pregnant the first night. And incidentally, it's my daughter's 3rd birthday today. So today's kind of a special day. I'm happy to be spending it with you guys. But that being said, my counselor had told me during the process about how confusing it can be whenever you have someone who's a very, very loving mom. Mom was a great mom, but then sometimes she would have like PTSD episodes. I remember one time, for example, she grabbed me, she threw me on the floor, and she started stomping on me. And I can literally tell you, I thought I was going to die. It was one of the scariest, because her face just like, I saw an intent where I'm gonna seriously hurt you. And but that was like the most extreme thing that ever happened. And but my counselor was telling me about how confusing it is whenever you have like ups and downs, like you don't really know what to expect, you know, with your mom. But it seems like that was a very frequent occurrence on you.
I honestly think your mom was sorry though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah,
like
for sure.
My mom was cruel, and that's the thing. My mom was cruel all the time. But see, my mom never had those, sorry I did that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she'd look on the TV, oh, family removed from abuse. And my mom would look at us kids, shit, good thing they didn't know about us, huh? I'd be in jail.
Wow.
Like 6 of us kids
Wow.
look at each other going, yeah, you would be. You know, I remember
Unbelievable.
I had a belt buckle mark on my arm. And I knew that the teacher knew it wasn't. I told her it was a pedal, a bike pedal. You know, this type of stuff covering from my mom because of the fear. You know, I
Yeah,
didn't
I
have
get
those.
that.
I didn't have that. Well, I'm going to skip school today, or I'm going to tell my teacher to F off because we were petrified of my mom. You did
Mm,
not, you know, when I hear my classmates, well, I told my dad to go this and I did it. I'm just like, no,
wow.
no. You
So,
know,
Leo, I got another question for you. Thank you for that. But what should society's response be to addiction? To me, I find the idea of throwing someone in prison for an addiction one of the most morally offensive things, I think, up there with slavery. I would say it's like if I got Corona-19 and COVID-19, and I walked into the hospital, and then they just threw me directly into prison. Like I couldn't imagine that scenario. That seems so cruel. So someone has this internal pain or external pain, and we're to throw them away in prison. That just seems like I can't imagine living in a universe where people think that's okay. But what do you think our collective response should be to addiction?
help.
Help.
Don't, you know, help. Stop the pharmaceutical companies from murdering us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, make you know, drugs accessible and affordable, and just be human about it.
Be human. Wow.
Be human about it. You know, Jesus sat with lepers, but a Christian conservative won't sit with a heroin addict.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
sent chills up my arm.
So I mean,
Oh,
that's hypocrisy right there.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's not
wow.
even more so. The onus should be more. The churches should be setting the example.
Wow.
The churches that make $72 billion a year, they should be setting the example. They should be opening up those clinics. They should be helping those people. They should be, you know, petitioning the pharmaceutical industry and the senators and all these people to say, stop killing us.
Yeah. I want to ask
If we had an AIDS blanket type of thing for opiates, it would. That's huge.
hmm,
Every opiate death versus every AIDS-related death, it's going to be a massive quilt, and
yeah.
that, you know, have people help.
Well,
Yeah, I want
sorry.
to.
That's sorry. I choked up a little bit. That's I was.
It's
pretty
heavy duty
intense.
stuff, but yeah, I
Appreciate
agree
that.
with you, Leo. Is yeah, people. We need to help people. We need to recognize that a lot of these conditions, I think, spring forth from trauma. They're pain responses. It's a natural response to pain, and we need to address it as such rather than addressing it as some kind of a moral failing.
No,
Uh,
it's not moral. It's class.
well, you're right about that too, because
If
if
I
you're
have the
rich,
means, if I have the means and opportunity to
yeah,
see, you know, Harvey Hollywood shrink, and he give me Xanax because that's cool,
yeah,
because I drive a Porsche, and that's just a posh thing to do. But I can't be Earl that lives in this alley,
mhm.
abused or raped over the coals. I can't have that heroin addiction because I'm dirty.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well, which touches on some politics. But I don't want to go on that bunny trail myself because, man, once you get me started, I'm not turning back. But I do want to ask a question here because you talked about some of this terrible abuse that you suffered. And unfortunately, it's a reality of the world that we live in. And some of our audience may be watching this and they may be experiencing something similar in their household, whether they are a
Mhm.
spouse. Maybe they could be the abuser. or perhaps they're on the receiving end of this. Again, they could be a child, they could be an adult, whatever they could, but they could be on the receiving end. So I kind of want to ask if you've got any kind of advice based on your unfortunate experience with this that you could give to one of these people, that they might be able to act upon it. I know it might require some thinking, but what do you say to someone who's on the receiving end of one of these relationships?
Well, see, that's a kind of a fickle situation because you don't know you're being abused. Like when I was a kid, if I got my beat for dropping a dish, I thought you would get your ass beat for dropping that dish equally. But then if you intertwine it with spare the rod, spoil the child, when you get that religious dogma into it, or you have to be that submissive Christian wife, you don't know you're being abused. Mm-hmm. So anybody that says, hey, Margaret, Harry's kind of spat the Bible verses and called you harlot, and well, he's right. He's the man. You can't break that cycle because it's a conditioning. Mm-hmm. So you're that's like, you better quit smoking. Well, don't tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. If people realize that they're a victim, they'll blame you for it.
Yeah. And I think there are people though out there who I think get the sense that maybe I'm a victim, or they get the sense they kind of start to compare notes and realize what I'm going through isn't normal. Mm-hmm. Or like if they're victims of sexual abuse, I think everybody knows if they're a victim of sexual abuse, that isn't everyone. It's a lot of people, but it isn't everyone. And no, it's not normal. But then they think if I say something,
right,
I'm going to end up in a worse situation. I could end up in foster care.
Right.
I could end up being killed or punished. Nobody will believe me. I mean, there's all these fears. And I think, we got to talk to survivors, man, and we've got to get their stories, and we've got to figure out, how do you navigate this? It's like navigating rapids,
Well, so, that's the thing though. People that are more closer to you would abuse you. Mm-hmm. I mean, Boy Scout, how's that lawsuit going?
Yeah.
How's those sexual assault lawsuits in the church going? There's predators everywhere. Mm-hmm. So what you got to do is why can't you vet these people? Mm-hmm. I don't understand. If you're a Cub Scout leader for 30 years and you have 600 victims, where's the vetting?
Yeah.
If you're, and that's the saddest part. If you're a priest that gets caught, they just move you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some of that.
They put gag orders in courts, so you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
If you're going to reach out to these victims of abuse, you need to shine these lights on these priests and these Cub Scout leaders and teachers and these youth leaders that pick and choose and spot victims. Broken home? Oh, come here. Your dad's gone? Well, hey, want to play catch? And I'm not going to begrudge. There could be, there are, and that should piss more people off that don't do that. So I want to know who he is.
Yeah.
And not if I find out he's a pedophile, just go down the stream a little bit. I don't care. People need responsibility and they need to be brought out, not hidden and not shamed. A lot of shaming. Why shame the victim? Well, you knew. You knew. And it blends in with politics. When Roy Moore was running for Congress or something in some Mississippi, he dated a 13-year-old girl at 32 years old.
Wow.
And they asked the parents, well, if you have a daughter, 14, if Roy Moore, well, I'd be nowadays, I'll be proud to have a man like that date my 15-year-old daughter.
Yeah. I got married and I found myself suffering from substance abuse. And I just to give an idea, like on our wedding night, or actually the next day, I got so drunk that, and I try to explain to some people the depths of like what addiction can do. And I just have a couple of stories that like you hear them, you're like, wow, like, but I got so drunk. I was taking a bath and I wound up throwing up everywhere. And I was so drunk, I couldn't even climb out of the bathtub. And I literally had to lay in my own vomit for about 40 minutes till I could even somewhat recover. Because I was trying to scoop out the throw up so I could drain the water, but there was so much of it, I couldn't do it. So I just had to lay there. And another time, I was on my bed and I would often get so drunk, I would wake up in the middle of the night just throwing up on myself. So I already knew I got to roll over to the side, but I fell off my bed and I landed right on a plate and it busted my arm open. And so blood, it was like a water gun. It was like just squirting out and I was throwing up and I was bleeding at the same time. So I was sliding all over my vomit and blood. And then I just passed out and my friend wrapped me up and wrapped my arm. But that's like where addiction can take you, you know, to some really, really low levels.
You want help at that point?
I did. I had to hit some rock. Actually, getting divorced is probably the best thing that ever happened to me because it was a rock bottom point where I had to rebuild my life after that, you know? So I do believe in rock bottom is actually a really good thing for a lot of people.
Well, there's always chances to start over. That's the beauty of life. You know what I mean?
But after I became a Christian and I was divorced at the time, I realized I needed to get counseling. And so when I went to counseling, we had to address the abuse, the sexual abuse I received as a kid. And it's a very uncomfortable process. But one of the worst things going through that is having my own relatives tell me that I was a liar. You know, I couldn't believe I could look into the face of my brother and says, I think you're a liar. Like I've ran away from my past. I've ran away from Bakersfield most of my adult life. I'm divorced now. And I'm just abruptly at 32 years old, just decided I wanted to start lying about something like this. Like, where's the logic in that? This is the most, I would give anything that if this wasn't true. I wish to high heaven this thing didn't happen to me. But why would it didn't even make logical sense to me. So I do believe that I think that's a really strong starting point is believing victims. Okay. And just not being shamed in it, because my counselor told me, probably the number one thing that stood out the most in all my counseling. I was in there for about a year. And she says, you're only as sick as your secrets. Yeah. You're only as sick as your secrets. So when you start to deal with things, I did a lot of journaling, a lot of poetry, but it really helped me. So I think that needs to be a starting point. This is one reason why, I'm doing this. We're doing this podcast is to get stuff out in the open, express ourselves, not dehumanizing each other. You know, we may have different worldviews right now, Moose, but there's a lot of things that we have in common, you know?
That's the biggest thing. I'm a humanist atheist. And that, people think I eat babies or, I believe in Satan. That's the funny. I don't believe in anything but humanity and science and art and beautiful instead of, well, you shouldn't do this because this God tells me you shouldn't do it. Life is too short to dictate. And that's the thing. We don't, I think most atheists, I don't want to speak for the whole, but we don't care what your religion does. We don't care, but when it affects us. So, and that's the thing. And going back to that abuse, I think what the abuse is, whoever might have done that to you was too well known.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So they didn't want to hurt his reputation.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you, and I'm not your brother. I believe you.
Thank you.
I knew that that man did it was higher up, well known in the town, because that's humanity. That's how they pick their victims.
Exactly.
So, especially if he can discredit you.
And the bad thing with that is the person was already dead. So there was kind of like this idea that I wanted to malign the person, but it wasn't in the slightest sense of the word that. It was just me trying to get healing, I wanted to get healing, and I wanted to show people that. And I'll tell you, the most amazing thing in the world, Marshall and Moose, happened after I did that. Something in no scenario could I ever have imagined happened whenever I came out, is that I probably had about a dozen people open up to me, telling me about their own fathers, their own grandfathers and uncles. They're like, I've never told anyone. I probably had at least 10 people say, I've never told anyone about this before.
Yeah.
And I was very grateful that they were able to springboard off of my courage to do that, because it's a very uncomfortable process. But again, if we're talking about addiction, it just, to me, you have to deal with the things, because when you don't deal with them, that's when they're allowed to fester and to grow. And it's when you like, there's another expression I like, is that light is the best disinfectant. Don't tell that to Trump and Corona, though, because he wants to bring the light inside of your body somehow. That's a joke, but light is the best. When you expose things to light, then we can get healing there. So, Marshall, you got any final thoughts? You want to say we're about coming to the end of this podcast?
Yeah, man, that's really heavy duty, because the reality is a lot of people, I think, suffer with some kind of abuse, and a lot of times they don't learn healthy mechanisms.
Right.
Just that, and then they carry on those cycles, and we got to break the cycle. So I guess what I would say to someone is, you got to cope with it, right? You might not be able to. It might not be a situation that you can escape. They tell you to tell someone, but you might not believe that's a viable option. And sometimes it's not. I get that. It's terrifying. If you can report something, report it. If you can tell. If you can't, you have to survive. And, I would say, write it down. Keep
Journal.
If you don't want to write it down on paper, write it down online, create an email account, and just write a log, write about it, record it for later. And then you'll have that. And maybe that's a way to cope and to process. And ultimately, when you get out of it, you've got to break the cycle. It's incumbent upon you that you don't subject people to what you've been through, that you try to find healthy ways to cope. And get counseling if you can. And you might wait until that person's gone, because you don't want the fallout from the family or the friends or the community.
Right.
And the thing is, there could be more victims that he left.
Well, that's the thing. And that's why it's important to come forward, because when a person comes forward, it emboldens the other victims. It gives them
exactly.
Because they realize, hey, here's a person who I know will believe me. Here's a survivor. And then you break all of that, and you could actually prevent future abuse from happening.
Right. Yeah.
Coming forward, So think about that when you do your calculus. But I also get it. I get it, man. You grow up in a home, that's your home. It may not be the best home, but that's your home, and you can't imagine being anywhere else. And so you just put up with it.
Yeah,
man, that's tough stuff. But I would discourage somebody from turning to those substances, because now you're just heaping on the self-punishment.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid, but it's a toxic Band-Aid. That's the problem with it. If it actually helped, that would be one thing, but it's bad.
So Leo, we're going to provide links to substance abuse help and mental health, everything in the description. So if you know anyone who might have any of these kind of issues and are just looking for an avenue to talk, then we're going to make that available. So, man, on behalf of the show, R.H.E. podcast,
it's a lot of courage on display.
We're promoting respect. We're promoting humility and imploring empathy, which means that the humility is we're being honest. We're also being honest just about, I'm not presenting myself as this ridiculously infallible perfect Christian. I told you on a personal level, you said it's nice to see someone else living out their convictions. And I'd be like, I'll be the first to tell you, I definitely do not live out all my Christian convictions. It kills me, and I strive to be a better version of myself, not just for me, but for my daughter. So, but the empathy is we're trying to relate, I'm trying to humanize you.
What's refreshing though is you're human.
Uh-huh.
Most Christians and religious, it's like their farts don't stink. They can't do no wrong. They're above reproach, and that's standoffish to me.
Yeah.
You give what you get. So if you're standoffish to me, all right, I can be way more standoffish to you. And that's how I get snippy on Facebook quick, because they hide behind their facade and I can see through it. So and that's the thing, that's the difference. They'll get mad, but you're human. You're not perfect. Nobody is perfect. So, and that's the point. You're supposed to mess up. You're supposed to trip and stumble. You're not useless or cursed or to me, you're just human. Tripping through life, making the best of what you got.
My goal with this podcast is not to convert anyone per se, but I do want to say that I do want to throw this out there that I did have a conversion at the age of 32. And that, in addition with the counseling, allowed me to be reunited with my wife, and really has changed my life. And I just, it pains me though that many Christians, as you say, the farts don't stink, or they try to act like they're perfect, because I find the highest amount of strength that I have in my weakness. And that's the Bible. Paul talks about that. He says God's strength is perfected in our weakness. So I make myself open, available, and I'm very honest about the progress I still need to make. But I understand that my natural inclination is going to want to be defensive. It's going to be to defend everything that I do. And it is to point out your flaws rather than addressing mine. So I have to keep that side of me in check, because I will be rude. I will be arrogant. I will be sarcastic.
But I wouldn't care, because I might be too. That's what I mean. That'd make me a hypocrite. If I say, well, I'm an atheist, and damn it, you're gonna listen, and you're not gonna react. It would be a conversation. It wouldn't be a debate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I don't want an echo chamber, in certain groups is all right, but differences of opinion, is refreshing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. A lot of other religion people get upset. Like, that's the biggest thing. They get upset when they know I'm an atheist. Their body language changes and stuff. And but it's that reaction I just think is so funny, because they don't know me. And I thought that judgment thing, first thing, I'm a bald man. I look scary. You saw me in a dark alley, or if I was in a bad mood, I'd be a scary looking dude. But I'd give the shirt off my back for you. So people judge. And then if I say I'm an atheist, or I say something like that, I'm instantly evil. So that's the judgment thing. The stereotyping, judging book by its cover, all those adages that people still do. People do have a story. Everybody has hurt. Everybody has mental illness to a certain extent. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has flaws. When you think you're flawless, man, you can't be. Nobody can talk to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's where respect, humility, and empathy all come together.
Leo, I just really want to thank you for your time. It's kind of hard to see with the way the cameras are. I'm looking directly into the camera, but I really want to thank you for your time. I wish I was here. Wish I was there with you so I could give you a hug, but accept a virtual hug from 6,000 miles away. And thank you for joining us today. I really hope that someone listens to this and takes away that we can humanize each other, and we can look to not dehumanize each other. Like that's one of the worst things. that you can do, because all kinds of evil comes out of that. So, Marshall.
Yeah, you know, look, if you're in a situation where there's abuse going on, tell someone. If you can't, write it down, record it, do something to process, survive it. And when you get out, the most important thing is that you break those cycles, but try to avoid the unhealthy coping mechanisms. Super, super important. That's what I got to say. Leo, thanks for coming on and talking. Wow. That was very powerful and moving.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your testimony, if you will.
It made me cry, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
I'm more
All
open
right.
to do it again. So
All right. All right. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Leo. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.